I always thought my home, built with the hard work of my late husband Arthur, would be the nest where my only son, Mark, would care for me in my old age. That was my dream, my quiet hope for all these years since Arthur passed. This house, these walls, they hold so many memories. Every plank, every brick, felt like a piece of our life together. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, our family's sanctuary, a place where I was safe and cherished. But one Sunday afternoon, a day that started like any other, filled with the comforting smell of roast chicken and the familiar quiet hum of the refrigerator, everything changed. Mark was here, and Brenda, his wife, too. They seemed a little too quiet, a little too observant. I remember watching Mark as he walked into my sewing room, a place I loved, filled with the soft light from the garden. His eyes weren't looking at the patterns or the half-finished quilt. They were measuring the space, the walls, the potential. Not for dot. It was in that moment, as he measured my room with his eyes, that a cold, sharp understanding pierced through me. For him, I was no longer the owner, the mother, the heart of this home. I was an obstacle, just something in the way of what they wanted. The feeling of rejection, silent but devastating, washed over me. My breath caught in my chest. Then he spoke, with a calmness that still chills me to the bone. No hesitation, no apology. The phrase he uttered, with the utmost naturalness, still echoes in my head today, a cruel whisper on repeat. "Mom, we've given it some thought, and Brenda's mother is coming to live here. It'll be better for everyone. Better for everyone. Not for me. Never for me." Just like that, a decision was made. Not asked, not discussed, but communicated. About my own roof, my own life, my own space. My son, my only son, had just told me my home was no longer fully mine, that my needs were secondary. In that instant, my mother's heart didn't just crack, it broke into 1,000 tiny, jagged pieces. Each fragment represented a lost hope, a shattered dream of old age cared for, of love reciprocated. It was a profound emotional coldness, a distance I hadn't known could exist between a mother and her child. The silent humiliation was almost unbearable. They weren't asking for my permission. They weren't seeking my opinion. They were simply informing me of a new arrangement, one that involved moving me, a piece of furniture, around my own home. I felt so small, so invisible, as if my very existence was an inconvenience. My hands, slightly trembling, clasped tightly in my lap, trying to hold on to some shred of composure. I didn't cry. The shock was too great, the betrayal too deep for immediate tears. They started talking then, Brenda chiming in with details, already planning, already rearranging. They spoke of renovations and making things more practical. My home, the one Arthur and I had built with every ounce of our sacrifice, our love, our hard work, was being carved up, reimagined, all without a single thought for me. My future, they decided, was to make space for someone else. But what they didn't know and didn't suspect in their self-assured planning was something very important. My Arthur, my dear, clever Arthur, was always a provident man. He had a way of looking ahead, of anticipating things, of always making sure I was protected. And he had left me with a protection no one, especially not Mark and Brenda, could have imagined. While they made plans for my future, talking over me as if I weren't even there, I made mine in silence. I held back that tear, swallowed the pain, and clung to a certainty that was beginning to glow, faint but determined, within me. They were about to discover that the forgotten old lady, sitting quietly in her armchair, was still the rightful owner of everything. The biggest surprise wasn't in my sad, silent eyes, but hidden in a folder of old documents. And I knew with a sudden chilling clarity that this was far from over. My name is Eleanor. I'm 78 years old. It feels a bit strange to just say it out loud like that, but here we are. For nearly 40 years, I was a primary school teacher, and oh, how I loved every single moment of it. The bright, curious eyes of the children, the challenge of sparking their imaginations, watching them learn and grow. It was more than a job, it was my calling. Every day felt like a small act of hope, a chance to pour my heart into shaping little lives. The school bell, the scent of chalk dust, the excited chatter, those were the melodies of my life. Today, though, my days are considerably quieter. I'm a widow now. My wonderful husband, Arthur, passed away 10 years ago. It still feels like a fresh wound sometimes, a phantom limb that aches with memory, a space beside me that can never truly be filled. We built this house, Arthur and I, not with a big inheritance, but with honest sweat and dedication, brick by painstakingly saved brick, dream by hopeful dream. It stands here, solid and familiar, in the same Bristol neighborhood. The very same streets where I raised our only son, Mark. This house, you see, it isn't just wood and plaster. It's a living archive of our life, of our deep love, of every memory we ever shared. My life, it's always been pretty simple, you know? Nothing grand or extravagant, just a comfortable, cherished existence. You could usually find me in the kitchen, especially in the afternoons. The air often thick with the comforting sweet smell of my homemade apple pie. It's an old family recipe, a taste of home that always brings a gentle smile to my lips. And then there are my rose bushes in the garden. Oh, I tend to them with such devotion, pruning them carefully, ensuring they have enough water, sometimes even talking to them as if they understand every word, silly as that sounds. I suppose it's the same kind of nurturing, the same gentle care I gave to my students for all those years, trying to help them all bloom into something beautiful. Since Arthur left me, my routine had settled into a quiet, almost predictable rhythm. Sundays, specifically, were always Mark's day. He'd visit, usually for lunch, just like he always had. We'd sit around the old oak table. We'd talk about small things, sometimes about his work, sometimes about the neighborhood gossip, or how my roses were doing. And then, after a few hours, he'd leave, usually with a slice of that apple pie. I clung to those visits. I truly did. I saw them as his affection, his way of checking in, of caring for his old mother. I convinced myself that this small attention, these brief moments, were enough. I felt happy, or at least, I desperately wanted to believe I was happy, just with that. But looking back now, with much clearer, albeit sadder eyes, I see how profoundly wrong, how incredibly naive I was. Little did I know, or perhaps little did I want to know, that for him and for Brenda, my daughter-in-law, those seemingly innocent Sunday visits had already taken on a different, much colder, more calculated purpose. They weren't really looking at me anymore. They weren't seeing my face, or my needs, or the stories etched in my eyes. No, their gaze was directed past me. They were looking intently at the solid walls of this house, at the generous size of the plot, at what this home, Arthur's and my home, could actually be worth on the market. It was reduced in their minds to a mere piece of property, an investment, a number on a balance sheet, not a sanctuary filled with a lifetime of love. It's just how I am, a habit from decades of teaching. You learn to keep everything in its proper place, to have your records straight, to be prepared for anything. And Arthur, my Arthur, he deeply instilled that foresight in me. He was such a provident man, always thinking ahead, always making sure everything was meticulously in order, that I would be safe, always protected. He used to say, and his words still echo in my mind sometimes, a comforting whisper from the past, "Eleanor, our assets are our peace of mind. Take good care of them. Never let anyone take what is rightfully yours." And I did. I took those words to heart, storing them away just as carefully as I stored my documents. So, I kept everything, every single document, every receipt, every official deed, all of it tucked away safe in an old, worn leather folder. It sits right there, still now, at the back of my wardrobe, almost hidden from view. For years, it was just a collection of papers, a testament to Arthur's meticulous nature. I never, not in a million years, imagined it would become what it is now. My quiet, my powerful, my undeniable weapon. My way to fight for my own dignity. Right here, within the very walls of my own home. The home I poured my life into building. And it was precisely that folder, filled with all those undeniable truths, all those legal details that they had completely, utterly forgotten existed. Or perhaps they never even knew it was there at all. They were so busy seeing what they wanted to see, so consumed by their own greedy plans, that they overlooked the most important detail. The very thing that, unbeknownst to them, was quietly waiting to turn their whole scheme upside down. The way things slowly, almost imperceptibly, started to shift after that Sunday. The way their questions slowly started to change. It was just the beginning of the end of my illusion, and the quiet, unsettling start of their real intentions. It all started subtly, you know, almost imperceptibly at first, like the tide going out, not with a rush, but slowly, bit by bit, until you realize how far the water has receded. Mark's visits, those Sunday rituals I cherished so much, they started to grow shorter. He'd arrive, sometimes a little late, and then, before I knew it, he'd be glancing at his watch, ready to go. Easy, comfortable silences we used to share, they became filled with a different kind of quiet, a coldness almost. Our conversations, too, changed. They weren't about my week anymore, or how my roses were doing in the garden, or if I'd baked a new batch of cookies. Those gentle inquiries about my health, about me, they just stopped. Instead, he'd start asking about the house. Always the house. Questions about the property taxes, for example. or if all the paperwork was up to date. He'd bring up things about the roof, or the boiler, or the insurance. Practical things, yes, but delivered with a different tone, a detached, almost investigative tone, rather than genuine concern. It felt like he was checking off a list, not having a conversation with his mother. Brenda, my daughter-in-law, she started doing it too. She'd make these comments, disguised as concern, you see. So clever, so insidious. "Oh, Eleanor, this house is just so large, isn't it? Just for you alone. Don't you feel lonely sometimes, all this space?" Or, "It must be so much work to keep it clean, mustn't it? Such a big house for one person." Each word a tiny pinprick, designed to make me feel something less than myself, less capable, less worthy of mine own home. A pang of sadness would hit me each time, a sharp, quick pain right in my chest. But then, my mother's heart, it would rush in to defend them. I'd try to justify it. "It's the busy life," I'd tell myself. "They worry about me. That's all. They're just concerned." I tried so hard to fool myself, to cling to the illusion that their intentions were pure. But the truth, a cold, unwelcome truth, kept nudging at me. The feeling that I was slowly, inevitably becoming a burden on them. It just grew stronger and stronger. It felt like a weight settling on my shoulders, heavy and suffocating. Then came the other changes, subtle again. They stopped inviting me to family lunches at their house. Oh, they always had an excuse, of course. "It's not to tire you out, Eleanor," Brenda would say, with that saccharine voice. "You know how hectic it gets with the children." They said it was for my comfort. But deep down, a little voice whispered the truth. They weren't trying not to tire me out. They were isolating me, slowly, gently making me invisible, pushing me further and further to the periphery of their lives, of my own family's life. Little by little, that cherished affection I thought they had for me, it just withered away. It gave way to an interest I so desperately refused to see, to name, to believe. The questions about the house became more and more frequent, more insistent. And then they started talking about their financial troubles. Mark would sigh. Brenda would look forlorn. "Oh, Eleanor," she'd say, "the rent for our small apartment in Bristol is just exorbitant. It's a struggle every month." They spoke of their difficulties, their expenses, their desires for something more. I could see the script being written right there in front of me. The plot was unfolding, clear as day. But my mother's heart, stubborn and hopeful and broken, it just refused to believe the ending of that story. It fought against it. It whispered, "No, not my son. He wouldn't." I saw the pieces. I saw the direction they were heading. But I closed my eyes to the destination. I desperately wanted to believe it wasn't what it seemed, that there was some other, kinder explanation. But what I still didn't know, what I couldn't bring myself to grasp, was that their plan went far, far beyond simple financial laments. It was much bigger, much colder, and much more personal than I could possibly imagine. The day that changed everything, the day the quiet hum of my life was shattered, was a Sunday that seemed just like any other. The sun was bright, the roses were in bloom, and I'd made my best roast chicken, hoping to cheer things up a bit after weeks of those unsettling conversations. Mark and Brenda arrived, just as usual, but there was a subtle shift right away. My grandson, little David, wasn't with them. That was strange. He usually loved coming, loved running around the garden. His absence was a first quiet warning. They sat at the dining table, but the usual Sunday chatter didn't follow. No one complimented the aroma of the chicken. No one asked about my day. There was a tension in the air, thick and heavy, that made my chest feel tight. Before I could even finish serving the pasta, before I could offer them a second helping, Brenda, as always, went straight to the point. No preamble, no gentle lead-in, just a cold, hard statement. "Eleanor," she began, her voice steady, almost too calm, "we need to have a serious talk. My mother isn't well and needs care. Her apartment is small, and so is ours." A chill, an icy, unwelcome cold went right down my spine. I felt it spread through my veins, freezing me in place. I looked at Mark, hoping for some reassurance, some sign that this wasn't what I feared. But he couldn't meet my gaze. He kept his eyes fixed on the tablecloth, picking at an imaginary crumb. Then he spoke, his voice low, almost a mumble. "So," he added, not looking at me. "Not really. We thought of a solution. Brenda's mother is coming to live here with you. We'll knock down that pantry wall, enlarge your old sewing room, and make a bedroom for her. You can stay in the back room. It's smaller and easier to clean." My breath caught. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. My old sewing room. The one with the best light, where I spent hours creating, mending, dreaming. The back room, small and rarely used, was to be my new space. They spoke of my house, my home, my sanctuary, my space, as if they were just reorganizing a storage unit, moving boxes, rearranging furniture, and I was just another piece of that furniture. The humiliation, it wasn't loud. There were no shouts, no arguments, no raised voices. It was silent, but it was deep, burrowing into the very core of my being. It was a profound emotional coldness, a distance I hadn't known could exist between a mother and her child. There was only the stark, undeniable certainty that for them, I no longer had a will of my own. I wasn't a person with feelings, with a right to decide about my own life. I was an object, something to be moved from one room to another, pushed aside, so that their lives, their comfort, would be enhanced. My home, the house Arthur and I had built with so much sacrifice, so much love, my sanctuary, was being invaded and redefined, carved up and rearranged, all without my permission, without even the courtesy of a discussion. They had simply made a decision for me, about me, in my own space. I remember just sitting there, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, trying to hold on to some shred of composure. The roast chicken on my plate grew cold. The pasta became a forgotten pile. My mind, usually so clear, felt fuzzy, filled with a roaring silence. They just kept talking. Brenda outlining the renovation, Mark nodding along, both of them detailing how everything would be better for me, better for everyone. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have guessed in their self-assured planning, was that in that deep, suffocating silence, the retired primary school teacher, the gentle old lady, had given way to something else entirely, to a quiet, determined strategist they never imagined existed. They just kept talking, Brenda outlining the renovation, Mark nodding along, both of them detailing how everything would be better for me, better for everyone. But in that deep, suffocating silence, the retired primary school teacher, the gentle old lady, had given way to something else entirely, to a quiet, determined strategist they never imagined existed. And while they spoke, detailing the renovation and how everything would be better for me, I didn't say a word, not one. I just merely nodded, with a vague look on my face, letting my gaze drift around the room, around my home, absorbing their plans as if they were just background noise. My hands, they were still clasped in my lap, but they weren't trembling anymore. A strange calmness had settled over me. The pain, oh, the pain of hearing them casually carve up my life, my memories, my home, it was immense. It was a fresh wound, raw and aching, but that pain, it brought with it an even greater clarity. A cold, sharp clarity that cut through all the illusions and all the hope I had clung to. I knew, with every fiber of my being, that arguing with them, fighting them, or even crying in front of them would achieve absolutely nothing. It would be useless. They had already decided. Their minds were made up, sealed shut against any input from me. They were just going through the motions now, an uncomfortable formality before they pushed me aside. My silence, I could see it. It confused them. They probably thought it was a sign of acceptance, a resignation, or worse, that my old age had finally caught up, that I was senile, easily led, no longer capable of understanding or resisting. Let them think that. Let them underestimate me. It was better for my plan. That night, sleep was a distant, unattainable luxury. My bed felt too big, too empty, too cold. I couldn't lie there, restless and hurting, so I got up. I wrapped my old wool shawl around me and went to sit in my favorite armchair, the one by the window. The house was quiet, a deep, chilling moment. Heavy quiet that usually soothed me, but now felt like a vast, empty space. I looked across the room at Arthur's portrait on the wall, his kind eyes looking back at me. I remembered his words, words he'd said to me so many times over the years, words that had always been my anchor. "Never let anyone take what is yours, Eleanor," he'd always say, his voice firm but gentle, not out of pity, not out of pressure. "Hold on to what you've earned, what we built together." It was as if he were right there, beside me, in that silent room, his hand on my shoulder, giving me the strength, the resolve that I desperately needed. They might have forgotten who I was, or perhaps they never truly knew the woman Arthur loved and respected, but I hadn't forgotten. Not for a second. The teacher, the wife, the mother, the owner. I was still all of those things. The next day, a Monday, dawned clear and crisp. I felt a quiet resolve settle deep within me. With the utmost calm, a calmness that surprised even myself, I picked up the phone. My fingers, steady now, dialed a familiar number. It was Mr. Thompson's office. Mr. Thompson was the family lawyer, had been for over 30 years. He was more than just a lawyer. He was a loyal friend of my husband, Arthur, someone we both trusted implicitly. He'd helped us with our wills, with property matters, with everything important. He knew our story, our sacrifices. I scheduled a visit to his office as soon as possible, explaining only that it was a private, urgent matter. He didn't ask questions. He simply set the appointment. I wasn't going to fight with shouts, with desperate pleas, or with tears. That wasn't my way, and it wouldn't work with them anyway. They would just dismiss it as an old woman's hysterics. No, I was going to fight with the law. I was going to fight with justice. And most importantly, with a pen. Arthur's words, the life we built, the meticulous care we took with our documents, it all came flooding back. It all made perfect, chilling sense now. They thought they were in control. They thought they had me cornered, a helpless old lady with nowhere to go. They were so busy planning their invasion, so confident in their assumptions. But the one thing they didn't know, the secret weapon they never suspected, was that the game had already turned. The rules had changed, and I, the forgotten old lady, now held all the cards. And I was just beginning to play my hand. The week that followed was a true test of my nerves. It was like living in a constant state of siege, but a silent one. Every day felt longer, heavier. My quiet home, once my sanctuary, had become a staging ground for their plans, and I, the owner, was merely an inconvenient fixture. Brenda, my daughter-in-law, she started calling every single day, not to ask how I was or if I needed anything. Her calls were different now. She treated me as if I were her employee, her personal assistant, there to follow her instructions. She'd say things like, "Eleanor, have you started packing up your sewing room yet? We really need that space free soon, you know?" Her voice was firm, expectant, like she was talking to a child or someone who couldn't quite manage their own affairs. It was a constant pressure, a steady drip of demands that wore down my spirit, piece by painful piece. And Mark, my son, he'd stop by almost every evening after work, but he wasn't there to see me. He wouldn't even sit down with me for a cup of tea. His visits were purely functional. He'd walk straight to the living room, or the sewing room, or the pantry area, pulling out a tape measure from his pocket. He'd pace the rooms, his head tilted, his brow furrowed in concentration. He'd stand there, talking quietly on his phone to Brenda, discussing the best position for her mother's bed, which wall to knock down, how to reconfigure my life to suit theirs. They talked about my furniture, about what would be thrown out, what could be kept, what needed to be moved to the back room for me, all of it right in front of me, as if I weren't even there, as if I were just a ghost floating through my own home, unseen, unheard. I watched them, these two people I had loved, these two people who were supposed to be my family, my support, and they just walked through my life, through my home, discussing its fate without a single glance my way. It was a cold, hard slap to the face, delivered with utter indifference. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen, making a pot of tea, when I overheard Brenda talking on her phone in the living room. Her voice was bright, full of excitement. "Don't worry, dear," she was saying, speaking to her son, their child, I suppose. Don't worry, Grandma's house will soon be just the way we want it. Grandma's house. Not Eleanor's house. Not my house. No, it was already theirs. It was their project, their vision, their future, with me erased from the picture. The loneliness, the profound sense of abandonment that washed over me in those moments, it was truly overwhelming. I felt like a stranger in my own story, an old piece of furniture, easily discarded, easily replaced. Something they were simply eager to get rid of, to make space for what they considered more valuable. I cried a lot, hidden in my small room, the one they had designated for me. Silent tears, hot and bitter, tracing lines down my wrinkled cheeks. But each tear, each wave of pain, it didn't break me. It did the opposite. It reinforced my decision. He laid out the path, step by legal step. I understood it all, every single detail. They were so incredibly busy, so preoccupied with their grand plans, their measurements, their phone calls, their future in what they now called Grandma's house. They were so consumed by their vision of invasion that they didn't even notice my absence on Thursday morning. The day was quiet. I dressed carefully, picked up my handbag, and walked out the front door, closing it softly behind me. I left to sign the papers that would quietly, legally, seal all our fates. They were still planning their victory, unaware that I had just signed the first page of their undoing. They were so consumed by their vision of invasion that they didn't even notice my absence on Thursday morning. The day was quiet. I dressed carefully, picked up my handbag, and walked out the front door, closing it softly behind me. I left to sign the papers that would quietly, legally, seal all our fates. They were still planning their victory, unaware that I had just signed the first page of their undoing. The following Saturday, the house was a flurry of activity. The sun was shining, almost mockingly bright, as if unaware of the storm brewing inside. Mark's car pulled up, followed by another, a small van loaded with boxes. Cardboard boxes, tape, the promise of new beginnings for them, the threat of erasure for me. Brenda was there, her face flushed with excitement. And then I saw her. Brenda's mother, Doris, a woman I barely knew, arriving by Brenda's arm. Doris looked a little frail, a little bewildered, but Brenda was beaming, guiding her, already introducing the house as if it were her own. "Mom," she chirped, her voice too loud, too cheerful, as they stepped over my threshold. "Mom, this will be your new room, facing Eleanor's lovely garden." She gestured towards my sewing room, the room they had already claimed. That was the last straw, the very last drop. I felt a surge of something cold and powerful rise within me. Not anger, not exactly, more like a quiet, absolute certainty. I took a deep breath. My hands, surprisingly steady, reached for the old leather folder Arthur had given me. It sat on the small table beside my armchair, waiting. I asked everyone to sit. My voice, though a little shaky at first, grew firmer with each word. Just for a moment, the bustling stopped. Mark and Brenda looked at me, a flicker of impatience on their faces. Doris looked just plain confused. They settled, reluctantly, into the living room, surrounded by their boxes, their plans. "Mark, Brenda," I began, my voice clear now, carrying through the quiet room. "Before you move anything, before you unpack a single box, we need to talk." I placed Arthur's old leather folder gently on the coffee table in front of them. The leather was worn smooth with time, a testament to its age and the precious documents it held. Their eyes fell on it, then back to me. They still didn't understand. I reached in and pulled out the first document. It was crisp, official. The original deed to this house. I unfolded it slowly, carefully, letting the legal print be seen. I pointed to the names on the document, to my name, to Arthur's name. Our names etched there, undeniable. "This house," I said, my voice steady, no longer trembling, "as you can see, is mine, uniquely mine, and I have not authorized any changes. Not to the walls, not to the rooms, not to the ownership." The shock on their faces was immediate, a sudden, almost comical tableau of disbelief. Mark's jaw dropped slightly. Brenda's eyes widened, her cheerful smile instantly fading into a tight, disbelieving line. She tried to argue, her voice rising slightly, thin and reedy. "Eleanor," she started, but I didn't let her finish. She stammered something about it being the right thing to do, about family, about caring for her mother. I just held up my hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Then I pulled out the second document from the folder, a certified copy of my new will, signed and registered just 2 days prior. I laid it on top of the deed, and regarding my future and the future of this house, I continued, my gaze moving from Mark to Brenda, holding theirs. "I have also made a decision." The room was silent again, a different kind of silence this time, a heavy, expectant quiet. They were waiting. They were finally listening. "When I'm gone," I said, speaking each word slowly, deliberately, "this house will not be yours, Mark. I have bequeathed it in my will to the charity that cares for abandoned elderly people here in the Bristol neighborhood. The only condition," I added, my eyes fixed on my son, "is that I can live here in peace until my last day." The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched, long and uncomfortable, between us. There was no anger on my face, no triumphant smirk, no desire for revenge, only the quiet, unshakable dignity of someone who had finally, unequivocally, reclaimed control of her own life, her own home. They just stared, their faces pale, their plans shattered. They realized, far too late, that they were not dealing with a fragile old woman, easily moved, easily dismissed. No, they were dealing with the true and sole owner of that place. And my home, my life, was no longer theirs to rearrange. They realized, far too late, that they were not dealing with a fragile old woman, but with the true and sole owner of that place. And my home, my life, was no longer theirs to rearrange. Mark and Brenda left without saying a word. The silence, that followed their departure was absolute, heavy with unspoken things. Brenda's mother, Doris, looking small and visibly embarrassed, just gathered her things and quietly went with them. The front door clicked shut, and then nothing. The house fell silent, a deep, profound silence. But this time, for the first time in many, many months, it wasn't a silence of loneliness. It was a silence of peace. I sat there for a long time, the old leather folder still on the coffee table. I felt no joy in their defeat, no triumph in their humiliation. How could I? It was my son, after all. Instead, a profound sadness washed over me, a sadness for the loss of the son I thought I had, the one who would care for me, who would cherish our family home. The illusion I had held on to for so long, that fragile hope for my old age, it was gone, shattered. But in its place, like a quiet dawn after a storm, came something else, my peace of mind, a deep, quiet sense of rightness. In the days that followed, I slowly, deliberately resumed my old routine, the one that had been mine before the shadows of their plans had started to darken my door. The world outside the house felt lighter, somehow. I went back to tending my beloved rose bushes in the garden, feeling the soil between my fingers, watching the new buds unfurl. I baked my apple pies again, the sweet scent filling the kitchen, not for Sunday visitors, but just for me, for the simple joy of it. I found myself chatting with neighbors at the gate once more, sharing a smile, a few words about the weather or the local goings-on. Simple pleasures, small moments, but they felt so precious, so real. The house itself, which for a time had felt like a battlefield, a place of tension and unwelcome scrutiny, slowly returned to being my home, my true refuge. It embraced me again, its familiar walls comforting, its quiet rooms no longer echoing with their plans, but with my own gentle rhythms. A few days later, I received a visit from a representative of the charity organization. She was a kind young woman with warm, understanding eyes. She thanked me so sincerely for my decision, and she assured me, with a gentle hand on mine, that I would be cared for and respected right here in my own home for as long as I wished. Her words were a balm to my soul, a confirmation that I had made the right choice, not just for myself, but for something good, something meaningful. Mark never called me again to talk about the house, never mentioned the subject. He sends me a message now and then, on special occasions like Christmas or my birthday. Always short, always formal. There's a distance there, an unspoken chasm. I know our relationship will never be the same. And yes, it hurts. The loss of that connection, the mother-son bond I treasured, it leaves an ache. But the pain of being disrespected, of being dismissed, of having my home and my life taken from me without a second thought, that pain had hurt much, much more. Today I live with less, perhaps, less illusion, less expectation, less of the family I thought I had. But I am much, much more. I have my dignity, unbroken and restored. I have my home, my sanctuary, just as Arthur and I built it. And, above all, I have peace of mind, a calm, settled feeling deep in my heart. I learned that true wealth isn't in the bricks and mortar of a house, no matter how cherished. It's in the self-respect that no one, absolutely no one, can take from us. And now I just exist here, quietly, peacefully. Each day a gift, each moment mine to savor. I learned that true wealth isn't in the bricks and mortar of a house, no matter how cherished. It's in the self-respect that no one, absolutely no one, can take from us. And now I just exist here, quietly, peacefully. Each day a gift, each moment mine to savor. This quiet peace, this feeling of dignity restored, it means more to me than any material possession. It's a lesson learned through such pain, a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. To feel discarded, to feel like your own life and home are no longer yours to decide, it chips away at your very soul. But it also teaches you what truly matters. It teaches you that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you stand for yourself, how you protect that inner sense of value. They looked at my wrinkled hands and my white hair, you see. They saw the lines of age, the slower steps, the quiet demeanor, and they presumed that my strength had faded with time, that my mind was less sharp, that my voice no longer held any power. They thought I no longer had a say, no longer had a will to decide my own destiny. For them, I was just an old woman, easily moved, easily forgotten, an obstacle, as Mark himself thought. But my story, the one I've just shared with you, it shows something profoundly different, doesn't it? It shows that dignity doesn't age. It doesn't fade like an old photograph or wrinkle like skin. True dignity, the deep-seated respect for oneself, it only grows stronger with the years, forged by every challenge, polished by every quiet victory. It's the quiet fire that keeps burning, even when others try to put it out. Even when those closest to you treat you as if you're invisible. I might be old, yes. My body might not move as fast as it once did, but my heart still beats with purpose, and my mind is still clear, capable of making choices, capable of standing firm. This realization, this reclaiming of my own self, has been a painful journey, but an essential one. It has shown me the true value of my own voice, even when it feels like no one is listening. It has reminded me that every human being, no matter their age, deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be respected. Especially when you reach this stage of life, when some people seem to think you're just waiting for the end, that you no longer have anything to contribute, nothing to decide. We, the elderly, we carry so much life within us, so many stories, so much wisdom, so much love. We are not just relics of the past. We are still here, living, feeling, deciding. We deserve to live our remaining days with the same respect and autonomy we've always deserved. My experience, painful as it was, became a stark reminder of this universal truth. And you? Have you ever felt undervalued or invisible by precisely those who should be your greatest support? Have you ever had to find that quiet strength within yourself to stand up for your own dignity when everyone else seemed to dismiss you? It's a hard road, but one that ultimately leads to a profound sense of self. A sense that cannot be bought or sold or taken away. It just is. And you? Have you ever felt undervalued or invisible by precisely those who should be your greatest support? It's a question that lingered with me for so long, even before this all happened. A quiet ache that I sometimes pushed away. But when it became undeniable, when the people I loved most made me feel like an inconvenience in my own home, that's when the real pain and the real clarity began. It's a hard road, finding that strength, that voice, when you feel like everyone else has already written your ending for you. But it's a road that, I promise you, leads to a profound sense of self, a feeling that cannot be bought or sold or taken away. It just is. This quiet peace I feel now, this sense of dignity restored, it means more to me than any material possession. It's a lesson learned through such unexpected pain, a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. To feel discarded, to feel like your own life and home are no longer yours to decide. It chips away at your very soul. It makes you doubt everything you thought you knew about love and family. But it also teaches you what truly matters. It teaches you that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you stand for yourself, how you protect that inner sense of value. They looked at my wrinkled hands and my white hair, you see. They saw the lines of age, the slower steps, the quiet demeanor, and they presumed that my strength had faded with time, that my mind was less sharp, that my voice no longer held any power. They thought I no longer had a say, no longer had a will to decide my own destiny. For them, I was just an old woman, easily moved, easily forgotten, an obstacle, as Mark himself silently thought. But my story, the one I've just shared with you, it shows something profoundly different, doesn't it? It shows that dignity doesn't age. It doesn't fade like an old photograph or wrinkle like skin. True dignity, the deep-seated respect for oneself, it only grows stronger with the years, forged by every challenge, polished by every quiet victory. It's the quiet fire that keeps burning, even when others try to put it out, even when those closest to you treat you as if you're invisible. I might be old, yes. My body might not move as fast as it once did, but my heart still beats with purpose, and my mind is still clear, capable of making choices, capable of standing firm. This realization, this reclaiming of my own self, has been a painful journey, but an essential one. It has shown me the true value of my own voice, even when it feels like no one is listening. It has reminded me that every human being, no matter their age, deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be respected, especially when you reach this stage of life, when some people seem to think you're just waiting for the end, that you no longer have anything to contribute, nothing to decide. We, the elderly, we carry so much life within us, so many stories, so much wisdom, so much love. We are not just relics of the past. We are still here, living, feeling, deciding. We deserve to live our remaining days with the same respect and autonomy we've always deserved. My experience, painful as it was, became a stark reminder of this universal truth. And this journey, this sharing of my heart with you, It has been a comfort. It feels good to speak these truths, to know that perhaps someone out there understands. Someone out there might feel less alone because of my story. It's important, I think, for us to stay connected, to hear these real stories, the ones that remind us of our shared humanity, our shared struggles, and our shared capacity for strength. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this one, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell, because these stories